Hey, welcome to this amazing closet in Lowell, Michigan. I'm so excited to be presenting this today because you know what? We're number 50. Not Michigan. I'm just visiting here. I'm on vacation. I mean Texas. Texas is 50 out of 50 when it comes to access to affordable mental health care. What that means is we need more providers in the field, not fewer. So let me tell you a little story. Back when I started teaching the 40-hour training to become a supervisor in Texas, I think it was 2006, my amazing mentor, Dr. Judy DeTrude, invited me to develop this course and put this course on for anybody who was interested in becoming a clinical LPC or LMFT supervisor. Awesome. And that was back in the day when it had to be face-to-face, right? So we would bring folks in for 2 weekends face to face. And if you're listening to this and you went to one of those seminars, you know at first it was grueling. I mean, it took 2 solid 20-hour each weekends face to face, going over the rules, going over all of the things that at the time LPC, they were the only ones who really dictated what we had to teach. But now both LMFT and LPC say exactly what we have to teach. And we went through everything. I mean, and Dr. DeTrude and I, we're rules junkies. I mean, we love the rules. We love going to the licensing board meetings. We love to ask questions. I was the liaison to the LPC board for the Texas Association for Counselor Education and Supervision. I have sat through face-to-face meetings that lasted 12 hours, and I loved every minute of it. So you can imagine these courses, they were very intense. We took folks through the rules. We took them through what might happen. And so it wasn't really surprising at the end of these courses when somebody would raise their hand and say, hell no, I'm not going to supervise. This is way too much liability. I love counseling. Why in the world would I take on a novice provider to oversee their work and take on all of the liability? Okay. Well, fast forward to about 2019, the rules changed. By then, my mentor had retired and given me all of the materials that I needed to continue the 40-hour training if I wanted to. So I took that and I developed the online course that you see now, and we update it every single year. But that kept ringing in my head, this idea that people would not supervise, or they would be called to supervise like they were called to counsel, and somehow I would talk them out of it, right? So there's one side of this where I have no choice, right? The licensing boards dictate what the 40-hour course must consist of, and we can't pull punches, we can't sugarcoat things, you know? The rules are the rules. The liability is the liability. But with the advent of moving all of this to the internet, and even the things that happened with COVID, where folks were getting more used to being on Zoom calls, we saw lots more online resources. It became super easy, at least for my company, to put lots and lots of resources online. So things like the Facebook group, the Texas Supervisor Coalition, Texas Counselors Creating Badass Businesses. There was a way to create this scaffolding, this cozy, fuzzy, warm blanket that folks could wrap themselves in, consisting of nurturing experts in the field. So when I talk about Texas Supervisor Coalition, I'm talking about a place that is snark free. I mean, anybody could ask anything. And we had past presidents of the American Counseling Association, past presidents of the Texas Counseling Association, active faculty in counselor education programs in this group answering questions in the most loving, nurturing way. Why? Because we all buy into this mission that it's our job to keep providers in the field, to nurture them through their own developmental model. And if you've taken my course, you know what a big deal the developmental model is, right? I often say everybody gets to be level 1, right? Everybody gets to be a beginner. Everybody gets to grow and change. Everybody gets to finally complete their, as Malcolm Gladwell refers to, their 10,000 hours to achieve expertise. Don't quote me on that. I think it's been debunked. But yeah, let's just say 10,000 hours of practice. That means, aha, you are now the expert. Everybody gets to go through those stages. And so do we really do the field any favors by saying in that first level of supervisor development, yeah, you messed up, you're out of here. Or, you know what, you're on your own, you should know how to do this. Absolutely not, at least not in my book. And speaking of book, I wrote a book, The Clinical Supervision Survival Guide, because of all of these stories that came out of teaching this course, where I heard from people, and people would actually come to the course to take it again, or they'd take it as a refresher. And I'd ask them, oh, how's supervising going? And they would say, well, I haven't taken on any supervisees. And I'd say, excuse me, you're not supervising after all of this great instruction? And it came down to fear. These are well-meaning people. You may be a well-meaning people, and you want to pay it forward. You want to grow the next generation of counselors. But then you take a course like mine or someone else, one of my, esteemed colleagues out there, and you learn all this stuff and you're like, no. I don't want to do this. I can't take on the liability. But you keep up the CEs, you keep up the designation and the license because you're thinking, okay, maybe someday. If that's you, I am so glad you're here today in this peek behind the curtain episode, because I want you to know the solutions that I and others have helped come up with so that you have that warm, fuzzy blanket of support around you as you are a brand new supervisor. And if it's you and you're listening to this and you have taken the course and you can attest to these resources, if you've benefited from these resources, I would absolutely love it if you would tag me in social media, tag me on Instagram at Kate Walker Training, and just let me know how it has helped you to supervise. Now, everything I talk about today, sorry about the clank, everything I talk about today is in the book, The Clinical Supervision Survival Guide. So those of you who don't know, I am a bit of a hiker. I love hiking. I finished walking 100 kilometers on the Camino in Spain. I hike Big Bend National Park. I just love to get out in nature. So I was reading this How to Survive kind of a book, how to survive when you're hiking, how to survive. And I thought, oh my goodness, this would be a great supervision book. And that's what brought me along this journey to writing the book and everything that I've taught in the 40-hour training over the past, almost 20 years to make sure providers like you who want to become a clinical supervisor, or if you're a clinical supervisor but you haven't taken on that first supervisee, have what you need to start supervising and putting more excellent therapists out into the world. So I'm going to start with the OER framework, or the OER triad, which is a framework to help you mitigate liability. Then I'm going to talk about the buddy system. Hear the hiking reference. Then I'm going to talk about an effective after-action review. All three of these things, again, you can find in the book. And the book is pretty cool because it's got a QR code. And when you scan the code, it takes you to a page where you can access every single resource that I'm talking about. You can download them, you can customize them for your practice, and it comes with the book. Like when you buy the book, all of this stuff comes with it. You will never get nickel and dimed when it comes to resources. You will never get nickel and dimed by me when it comes to resources. I want you to have what you need in order to practice. Okay, so let's start with the OER triad, this framework for success. All right, so one of the reasons I hear a lot for supervisors never starting is really similar to the reason that I hear that supervisors quit after a bad experience with a supervisee. So if we talk about the level 1 supervisor, the brand new supervisor, they've just finished a course like mine, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, so much liability, so many rules, so much paperwork. Okay, I hear you. And here's what I teach in the 40-hour training to become an LPC or LMFT supervisor in Texas. O stands for orientation, E stands for evaluation, and R stands for remediation. Now in Texas, it's actually encoded in both LPC and LMFT that you must remediate your supervisee before you terminate them. Now I always throw in, unless they do something egregious, right? I mean, if they're having sex with their client, you're probably not going to put them on a remediation plan. At least I wouldn't. I'll own that one. I'll stand on the soapbox for that one. But if we're talking about mistakes, if we're talking about omissions, if we're talking about developmental issues that can be normal with a growing brand new LPC associate, a brand new colleague in the field, right? Then the remediation plan is designed to teach and reteach and hold this person accountable for what they should know by now. So let's work backwards from that. What should they know by now? Well, you won't know unless you evaluate them. And I hear about supervisors all the time who don't give formal evaluations. They don't use formal assessment instruments. And here's why that's a mistake. Again, my soapbox, I'm going to own this, but it's after doing this for a long, long time. It's like getting hired by some place that will never give you a review, right? So you're working there 1 year, you're working there 2 years, you never get a review. All of a sudden, out of the blue, they're like, hey, you know what? You're fired. And you're like, why? Well, because you're terrible at what you do. And you're like, whoa, hold on a minute. You never gave me a review. What's going on here? Okay, so you wouldn't do that at a job, or that would be a terrible job, right? So as a supervisor, where everything depends on the relationship, right? You must have that transparency and that trust with your supervisee. Imagine coming out of the blue and telling your supervisee, hey, I've been thinking about it and I'm going to put you on a remediation plan. And they're like, what? Wait, what? I've been working with you for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 18 months, and you haven't mentioned anything. In fact, we cut up every time I come in here. You're always smiling and laughing and telling me what a great job I do. Right? That's an example of supervision, or let's call it just a supervisor who may be afraid of conflict. They may be reluctant to evaluate another adult. Maybe there's too much similarity in age or life circumstances. And that happens. I mean, especially with new supervisors. So what the OER, or I should say the E in the OER triad, is for, you must get your supervisee used to the idea of regular formal evaluations. And that means when it does come time and you're like, you know, this skill that you've been struggling with for the past 6 months, and I have retaught the skill. I've given you homework. I've asked you to show me videos, and you're not improving. And here's the assessment to show how hard we've tried, you and I both. Well, now it's time for a remediation plan that's a little bit more formal, right? If you have been evaluating your supervisee all along, then it's not going to be a surprise, which also means it won't damage the relationship if and when you have to give them a remediation plan. So that E is essential, regular formal evaluations. O, I'm working my way backwards here, right? O stands for orientation, which means you're going to tell them exactly what you're going to assess them on, right? You're going to teach them the test. Better than that, you're going to hand them the test. You're going to show them the assessment, and you're going to say, hey, I need you to do these things really, really, really well in order to deliver services, become the best you can be, protect the public. So starting off with that orientation, Here's what you can expect from me. Here's the instrument that I'll assess you with. Here are the dates approximately of when I will give you these assessments. And oh, by the way, if you struggle and fail to meet expectations, expect a formal remediation plan, which looks a little bit like this, and you can hand them the template. Now, granted, a template for a remediation plan won't be personal, right? It's just going to be a template. But if you're a member of the Texas Supervisor Coalition Facebook page, we've got one of those in our files right now. You could download it and look at it. If you buy the Clinical Supervision Survival Guide, you scan the QR code, boom, you can download a remediation plan. It's something you can personalize for your supervisee. Now, take a deep breath. And if you are a supervisor, feel how that feels. To think that you would take on, let's say, 2 or 3 new supervisees and be assured that if something goes sideways, that you have some tools in your toolbox. Right there, that's what I'm going for. That feeling of, okay, I can do this. Now, it may not soothe you completely, because if you're anything like me, I don't like to go first, right? I don't like to just do things in a vacuum. I want to know how other people do it. So that's where the buddy system comes in. And I talk about this in the book as well. If you think counseling's isolating, holy moly, supervision can be mega isolating. So a lot of the times folks quit supervising, or they never start supervising, because there's no one else in their community who's doing that. Well, pre-COVID, when we weren't used to all of the Zooms and all of the virtual everythings, that was probably, I don't have any data, but that might have been a bigger problem than it is now, right? Because when I go on the social media sites and I see organizations for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or I see counseling groups for West Texas, El Paso, or Central Texas, Austin, I know that these folks are helping each other. It's a great group. Some of them even have face-to-face meetups. And then, of course, we do have the state organization, the Texas Counseling Association, and several others. So having that support, just being able to say, okay, how did you do it? Being able to listen while someone else describes how they implemented a remediation plan, how they assessed a supervisee. It can be so helpful in getting folks over that hump and helping them to see, okay, I can do this. I can supervise. I've got my buddy system. I've got my tribe. I can make this happen. I can put some excellent therapists in the world.